Okay, let's learn how to graph linear equations using slope and y-intercept. So using slope and the y-intercept to graph a linear equation is a lot like following a pirate map. On a pirate map, we have a red dot, and it's where we start to search for the treasure. We're going to search for the treasure right here in Dead Man's Cove. The dotted line represents the walking directions we need to follow. So here is our path that we need to walk on. And then the X marks the spot of the treasure. This is where we dig and we get the pirate treasure. Okay, so that's a pirate map. Now let's compare a pirate map to a math graph. So first, we have the red dot where we started to search for the treasure. For a math graphing, our starting point for our graph is going to be the y-intercept. In a pirate map, we have a dotted line that represents the walking directions we need to follow. In a math graph, the slope is going to give us our walking directions. Remember that the slope is equal to the rise over the run. So the slope is going to tell us how far up we need to travel and how far over we need to travel. Those are our walking directions. And then in the pirate map, X marks the spot of the treasure. And in a math graph, at the end of our walking directions, the treasure is the second point, that precious second point that we need so we can draw the line. Once we find that second point, we've basically graphed our equations. All right, let's give it a try. Here we go. So we have an equation, y equals 1/2 x plus 2, and we need to find the slope and the y-intercept so we can use our pirate map technique. So we're going to remember y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Remember? So m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So when I'm looking for the slope, I literally just pick out the number that's multiplied times x. So the slope is 1/2, right? And when I'm looking for the y-intercept, I can just select the constant term, the number, the term that's just a number that it doesn't have any x in it. And that is going to be 2. So 2 is our y-intercept. 0, 2 is technically our y-intercept, right? Remember, 2 only gives us the y coordinate of the y-intercept, but the x coordinate of the y-intercept is always 0. So as long as I know the y coordinate, I know where this point is. Okay, so we are ready to do our pirate map method. Remember, our starting point is the y-intercept. Just like with the pirate map, we need a place on this big coordinate plane to start. We are going to start at 0, 2. So 0, 2 is right there, and that's where we start. Okay, and then we also need our walking directions, and our walking directions are going to be the slope. So the slope is going to tell us that we need to go up 1 and over 2. Remember? Rise over run. Since the rise is a positive 1, we are going to be traveling up 1 from our starting point. Since the run is a positive 2, we're going to go to the right 2 from our starting point. So let's do it. So we're going to go up 1, and we're going to go to the right 2. And then X marks the spot right here. That is the spot. And the spot is the second point that we need to graph this line. Once you have 2 points, you have everything you need to graph this line. So you can just take your ruler and draw a line. Oh, that's a bad line. I'll draw it there and I'll move it. draw a line that connects those 2 points, and that's it. You have graphed this equation. How cool is that? That's it. That's all you need. There's your graph, and you are done. All right. Let's do it again. Let's practice it again now that you know how to do it. Whoop. Try it. Let's try it again. Okay, so the equation y equals negative 2x. That's our equation. And we need to find the slope and the y-intercept from that equation. So let's write y equals mx plus b right above the equation. So the slope is m. So m is whatever number is multiplied times x. So m is negative 2. That is our slope. Our y-intercept is our constant term. And can you guys see that that is missing in our equation? It has not been written down. The only reason they would not write it is if it was a 0. If the y-intercept was a 0, then they would do negative 2x plus 0 would give us negative 2x, and we wouldn't see that second term. So when you have an equation that only has one term on this side, just add plus 0 to find your y-intercept. Okay? So our slope is negative 2, and our y-intercept is 0. Okay, so the y-intercept is our starting point. And 0 means it's going to be 0, 0, right? So the y-coordinate is 0, and the x-coordinate is always 0. So that is our starting point right there, 0, 0 on the coordinate plane. Just as good a point as any other point on the coordinate plane, right? It's always going to be a number on the y-axis because it's a y-intercept. It can be 0, it can be 3, it can be negative 3, it can be any number on here, but it will always be on the y-axis because it's a y-intercept. Okay, now we need to use our slope for our walking directions, but it feels like we have incomplete directions. All it says is negative 2. We have to have a rise and a run. Actually, let's put it over here. We need a rise and a run. So we have to make this number into a fraction. We want slope to be a fraction. If your slope is not a fraction, make it be a fraction, right? We can make any whole number into a fraction by putting it over 1. Okay, now we have a rise and a run. So our rise is negative 2. And because it's negative, we're not going to go up 2. We're going to go down 2. We have a negative rise. The run is positive 1. So we're going to go to the right one, right? If it was negative, we'd go to the left, but it's positive, so we go to the right. So these are our walking directions right here. Starting at 0, 0 on our pirate map, we're going to go down 2 because that's what our walking directions tell us to do. And then we're going to go to the right one. So down 2, that's a negative 2. To the right one, that's a positive 1. And ta-da! X marks the spot of that precious second point that we need to complete our graph. All right, so we're just going to connect those 2 points with a nice straight line. Notice I didn't draw my line from here to here. You are graphing this infinitely long line. You are not connecting the dots. So even though we only need 2 points to define a line, make that line nice and big that goes all the way across your coordinate plane. Okay? And that's it. You're done. Let's do one more just to make sure you got it. One last time. Okay, we need the slope and we need the y-intercept. So we're going to write y equals mx plus b right over our equation. And what I notice is I don't have a plus here. I have a minus sign. So I'm going to replace subtraction with adding a negative. I like to do that anyway, to be honest. But it's especially good to do here. Instead of writing -3, write plus a -3 because our formula has a plus in it. So our equation has to be plus, not minus. Okay, and now we can identify our slope. Slope is whatever number is multiplied times x. So negative 2/3 is our slope. And we can identify the y-intercept. The y-intercept is that constant term, the term without an x in it. So our y-intercept is -3. So for our slope, -2/3. For the y-intercept, 0, -3. Or we could just think -3 on the y-axis, right? So I'm on the y-axis, I'm going to go down to -3, and that's my starting point on my pirate map. Okay, once I got my starting point, I need my walking directions. That's the slope. So the slope is the rise over the run. Our rise is -2. If you have a negative slope, you got to either put that negative sign in the numerator or the denominator. It doesn't matter which, but you only have one negative sign and you have to choose. It can't hang out on the side. So it's either -2/3 or 2/3, your choice. So I'm going to say the rise is -2, which means down 2 because it's a negative rise. And the run is +3, which means let's go to the right 3. So starting here at my y-intercept, I'm going to start here and I'm going to go down 2. And then I'm going to go from there, keep walking. These are my walking directions. I'm a pirate. And I'm going to walk 3 paces. We'll call them paces. It's more piratey. Okay, to the right. And then X marks the spot of my second point. And I can draw a line through these 2 points and I am done graphing. But what if instead of writing -2/3, I'd written 2/3? Oops, I want a black. 2/3. What if that was my slope? It could be. That's still -2/3. Well, then my rise would be going up 2, because now this is a +2. And my run would be 3 in a negative direction. So the negative direction is back to the left, right? So let's try those walking directions on and see what that gets us. So up 2, start at my starting point. I always start at the y-intercept or starting point. So I would go up 2 instead of going down 2. And instead of going to the right 3, I'd go to the left 3. And now that precious second point that I need to complete my graph is here. But do you notice that all of these 3 points are all on the same line? So I can draw my line, and it doesn't matter if I had picked this point or this point as my second point. Oh, wow, that's poorly done. Let's undo that and try again. Up 2 over 1, 2, 3. Let's start from here. Look at that. So all 3 of those points end up on the very same line. So if I had used these 2 points, I'd have the same line as if I used these 2 points. And if you want, you can use all 3 just to make sure it's super precise. You guys got it? I sure hope so.